Okay, you're doing a Bible study and you find a repeated word or phrase. Well, what do you do with it? Well, in this video, I am going to show you a very simple observation technique that you can use that's going to just totally enrich your understanding of that word. Welcome to His Ancient Ways. If you're new here, I'm so glad that you are. And if you're not new here, welcome back. Okay, so we're going to dive into the observation portion of inductive Bible study. And part of that is being able to recognize, repeated words and phrases. And that's a very common teaching. And you've probably, even if you don't know that, you've probably recognized it when you're reading your Bible. But there's another technique that you can kind of marry with that will really enhance your understanding of whatever word or phrase that you see repeated. And it doesn't require any tools at all. So what this tool is using list making with that repeated word or phrase to basically kind of get an understanding of all the different ways that word is being used and what you can learn about that word because of the different ways that it's used. So I'm going to actually turn around the camera. I'm going to show you my screen because I have this on Blue Letter Bible and I kind of made a list on Canva and all that good stuff. So I'm going to turn it around. I'm going to show you a couple of examples and then I'm going to show you a big example. I'm actually not going to do it for you, but I'm going to challenge you to go ahead and do it on your own. But anyway, let me go ahead and switch over. So the first one that we're going to do is Joshua 1 through, it goes all the way through 18, but we're not going to cover that much. In Joshua 1, you have this phrase, be strong and courageous. It's repeated 1, 2, 3, 4 times in the first 18 verses. And on the right here, I have, oops, wrong one. I have kind of the list that I pulled out of this. And you might pull out a different list when you're doing this. But let's go ahead and just start reading here. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' assistant, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, you and all his people, you and all this people, into the land that I am giving to them, to the people of Israel. Then it jumps to, I'm jumping to verse 6. He gives some more examples, some more instructions in there, but we're going to jump to verse 6. He says, be strong and courageous, for you shall cause this people to inherit the land that I swore to their fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous, being careful to do all the law that Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may have good success wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened, and do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. And then verses 17 through 18, Joshua gives some very specific instructions to some of the tribes. And those tribes they respond favorably, and they say, whoever rebels against your commandment and disobeys your words, they're speaking to Joshua, whatever you command him shall be put to death. That's if they rebel. And then they say, only be strong and courageous. So what can we learn about this? Just really, really quickly. There's all these instances. So this first one, be strong and courageous, for you shall cause this people to inherit the land that I swore to their fathers to give them. So verse 6, he needed to, he needed courage to lead the people into the land. So we can learn that leadership requires strength and courage. Let's go to verse 7. Only be strong and very courageous, being careful to do according to all the law that Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may have good success. So verse 7 here, he needed courage to remain obedient to the law as it was given to Moses. So we learn that obedience requires strength and courage. Let's come down to verse 9. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened and do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. He needed to remember that because God was with him, he could remain courageous. Abiding requires strength and courage. And then jumping down here, whoever rebels against your commandment and disobeys your words, whatever you command him, shall be put to death. Only be strong and courageous. So, verse 18 I have here, the people reminded him that they were willing to do hard things based on his commandments. So they were encouraging him to stay strong and courageous. So what can we learn from that? Doing hard things requires strength and courage. So leadership requires strength and courage. Obedience requires strength and courage. Abiding requires strength and courage. And doing hard things requires strength. Okay, so that's the first example. Really simple. How I just literally pulled that out in just a few minutes, and we can learn so much about what requires strength and courage. There's a lot more than that, but in this passage, this is what he needed, and we can apply the same things to ourselves. Okay, so now let's go to Psalm 37, and this is about fretting. So let's just read. I've got verses 1 through 6 or 1 through 8. It's actually quite a long psalm, but the phrase fret not is 1 through 8. Fret not yourself because of evildoers. Be not envious of wrongdoers, for they will soon fade like the grass and wither like the green herb. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and befriend faithfulness. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him, and he will act. He will bring forth your righteousness as the light, and your justice as the noonday. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Fret not yourself over the one who prospers in his way, over the man who carries out evil devices. Refrain from anger and forsake wrath. Fret not yourself, it tends only to evil. So what can we learn about fretting here? So first it says fret not, and then it kind of gives us a whole bunch of directives and commandments. And so I put over here, fret not. Well, how? How do we go about not fretting? Well, we trust in God, right? That's in verse 3 right here. We do good. That's in verse 3 right here. We delight in the Lord. That's in verse 4. We commit our way to the Lord. That's in verse 5. And then in verse 7, he says, be still and wait patiently, fret not. So also, how do we not fret? We just still ourselves and we wait and we listen for the Lord. Now, why is it important? What can we learn about fretting here in this last one? Well, we learn why why we shouldn't do it. What is it caused by? It's caused by anger is what we learned. Fretting leads to evil, and anger unchecked will lead to outbursts, which can lead to sinful behavior. So that's why we should not fret, and also how fretting can be caused by anger. So again, just a really quick way to kind of learn about fretting and how to prevent fretting and why it's important for us not to do it, just from making a list right here. Now, here's a challenge for you. So Hebrews 11, we're not going to go through this. We're actually going through this in my membership group, but we're not going to go through this right now because look at this. Look at all those highlights of the word faith in all of Hebrews 11. That's why the chapter header is called By Faith. It talks about what faith is, and then all these by faith, and it has all these stories. And what you can do is go to all of these stories. Most of them are in Genesis. Actually, I think they're all in Genesis. Well, most of the big ones are in Genesis. It moves on after that. But it covers all these old stories in Genesis. Cain and Abel and Enoch and Noah and Abraham and Sarah. And then it goes through their entire lineage by faith, and Isaac and Jacob and Joseph. And then it gets into Moses and how they were fleeing Egypt. And then it gets into Joshua and taking the promised land. And so all these amazing stories, you can learn so much about faith by each one of these stories. Now that's kind of like a big deep dive, not necessarily a list, but you could make a list. You could just like go read the story and just make one or two statements about what faith was required for that story, and come away with just a bullet point for each story of what kind of faith was required. That's ultimately what we're doing right now in our study, in my Pathfinders membership. So anyway, that is the easiest way to do kind of a word study, especially like if you don't have an app, or you don't have your phone with you or something, you don't have your computer with you, and you don't have any way to like necessarily look up a definition of a word. You can do a word study that way. You can also look in your concordance and find out all the different verses that word is in, and you can dig in that way as well. So this is a super simple observation technique where you're taking lists and marrying it to repeated words and phrases. So hopefully you found that helpful. Now I do have a couple other videos. I will share them on the end screen, as well as a playlist, and also down below for you to go check those out, because I talk about lists in a couple of different videos. And also I'm sure I probably talk about repeated words. I know I talk about repeated words in one of those videos. I'll link that video by itself, but then I will also link the playlist where you can find my other videos on list making, because it's a super, super powerful observation technique, and I love it, and I do it all the time. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.